Welcome back to another edition of the Wolverine.com podcast. My name is Chris Balas. With me, Doug Skene, Michigan's former All Big Ten offensive lineman who watched happily as Michigan improved to 7. And tell you what, man, knowing that both guards weren't going to play, we thought Carson Barnhart would get in there again. I thought he did a pretty decent job. Chuck Filiaga at right guard still had a couple of issues, but overall, 294 yards rushing. You're not going to complain too much, are you?
No, no. And I would say for both of those guys, obviously Barnhart has not played as much as Filiaga has at right. Filiaga's been bouncing around right and left throughout the course of the season. I thought they did all right, Balas. Again, and I would say overall offensive line played very well and good enough to have that many rushing yards. So, but that doesn't go without a couple things that were noticed, and one of them at least showed up in a sack. But nonetheless, overall, pretty good grade for that offensive line.
Yeah, and I gave the running game, I think, an A. And part of it too, man. In the past, we've said, hey, running backs, there have been holes there at times, and they haven't been hitting them. And maybe graded the offensive line down a little bit. Some of those moves, Blake Corum, Hassan Haskins, and those guys pushing the pile, they are getting these guys some extra yards with those making a safety miss type moves. In some instances, Blake Corum was making a linebacker miss at the line of scrimmage, making them look a little bit better than they were. So, got to tip a cap to those two as well, and Haskins and Corum.
Yeah, those no doubt. Obviously, those guys are finding their groove here midway in the season, and they're clearly comfortable with what the offensive line is trying to do. I think the play of the game, there was two blocks there, and maybe we'll review it from the end zone. Vastardis going into the south end zone. Vastardis pulls around to the end, logs the end, and then Eric All came up and made a great late block adjustment to get to the inside number of that defender and got a nice inside number hit, and that sprung the walk-in touchdown. That was really nice block by Eric All in that play. So clearly some improvement. The offensive backfield is getting comfortable with what's going on and where the holes are and where they're not. So yeah, there's really good stuff out there, obviously. And yet at other times, as we'll see, there was some plays where we got no push in the middle and we're not getting anywhere, and it was a 1-yard gain. So that's the kind of thing that it happens, right? But you never want to have 1-yard gains. You'd like to at least get 3 yards. Every time you run the football, you should get at least 3 yards. And wow. So, maybe that's too high of a standard. I don't know, Balas, but you know where you're going. You know the snap count and everything else. You should be able to do that. But they're getting better as the weeks go by, but they are not where they need to be quite yet.
Yeah, and especially in the red zone, and we have to talk about that a little bit because there's still some issues there, and it doesn't really seem to me that they figured out what they really want to do down there. Sometimes they're running the ball into the line. Sometimes they're throwing little flat passes. Sometimes they're getting a little too tricky. The receiver jet sweep there where you pass the ball at the 3-yard line. I think that's a play better used at the 30 or the 40 or something like that. But to me, that's an issue, and that's against better teams on the schedule. Michigan State, Penn State. I understand they lost at Illinois, but that's still going to be a tough game up there in Happy Valley. Ohio State. Those are the times that you're going to have to put points on the board down there. Is that a concern to you?
Yeah, it absolutely is, and it kind of blends into the short yardage and goal line offense that we've been talking about all year long. It's interesting, and maybe it's a little bit obvious that we don't have a go-to receiver in the red zone to make the big touchdown play. But I got to keep reminding myself, and you keep talking about, we got 3 tight ends. Eric All and Schoonmaker are 6'5". I mean, if you're looking for weapons, because clearly, I mean, they like to do the power rush, right? We like to power the football down the field with the running game. But then defenses tighten up, the field gets shorter, everything gets smaller down in there, and it's a different game in the red zone and certainly inside the 10. If you're going to have a play action off of that, how about you use your 6'5" tight ends to get into the backfield, into that end zone, and get up in the air and use those big old long arms to catch a football? So finding their identity in the red zone going into the goal line is going to be critical. It's going to be a critical venture here for this Michigan offense if they figure this out.
Yeah, and there's always second guessing involved when plays don't work. But man, when you're first and goal from the 3 and you've got Hassan Haskins back there, to me, pound it, pound it, pound it. And at one point, that guy is going to get into the end zone. And I granted, I get it. I remember the goal line stand at Penn State in 1993 when Joe Pa tried to do it. But man, the way they're running the ball, when you got a back like Haskins is one of those guys. and I'm going to ask you to compare him to maybe some of the backs that you blocked for in the past, where you hit him and that guy's going to fall forward for at least another yard or two, in my opinion. It is very rare, and I don't know how many yards lost they had again on Saturday, but it is very rare. If you look at the stats, these guys are not losing yardage. A, that's a testament to the good job that the offensive line is doing, but B, these guys are tough to bring down.
Well, they're tough to bring down, and specifically Haskins has got this great balance. And how many times does he use his offhand to
Right.
keep his balance? Or he's got great feet. And you're right, Balas. I mean, he's not like he's a huge, overpowering physical presence back there as far as height and stature goes. He plays with a powerful game of football that's beyond what you can see on television. And that's why he's grinding out yards. I mean, he's the dude that you would need to get an extra yard. He'll move the pile. And that's clear. He does it every week. And he just keeps getting better and better at it. And then you throw Corum in there, and he's got a little bit more of a scat, jump cut kind of style to him. And so, again, it just continues to evolve with these two and get better and better, and keeps the defense a little bit on its heels with what kind of running back they're going to have to defend. But I mean, if you line up Hassan Haskins and say, is this the prototypical power football back that you're looking at? The answer is no. But he plays beyond that with his toughness. It's fun to watch.
It is, and I wish your kid was there to tell me which buttons that on the PlayStation that you used for some of the moves. Did you see the pirouette on the first series when he spun? There was that one. Then you've got the rugby scrum where he's carrying guys literally for 15 yards. I went back and looked at it. It was a 19-yard run. Somebody was on top of him in 4 or 5 yards, and then he and the rest of the line pushed that thing 15 yards. You got to be. I would imagine you almost got up in your chair on that one, right? A little bit.
I was laying on the couch watching that play, and I got to tell you, I was sitting there watching it by myself and watching that, and I did get a smile on my face. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And that it's kind of a tie. That play, or maybe the touchdown that I described earlier with Vistardis and Eric All in that block, that was really, really nice. Those were my two plays that really stuck out for me in that game that we watched. But what's interesting and as cool as ever about that play is that it wasn't just Haskins driving in there. You had, I think Honingford was in there, Stuber, offensive lineman. You had guys jumping in, and it's that effort, sort of kind of intensity, and that's the kind of thing that has been absent in the last few years around this program. Again, it's another little indicator as to this team is a little bit different. They're playing as a team. They care about each other. This is all good stuff.
Yeah, they want to win, man. And they want to win next week, too. And we'll get to that game in a couple of minutes here. But I think we had one poster, and I think his name was I Like Jake Butt and I Cannot Lie. Kind of hinting that he's like, well, is Skene going to be hard on the tight ends again this week? To me, it's warranted when you criticize. I thought they did a pretty good job, though, especially Eric All on Saturday. I thought he had one of his better games blocking.
Yeah, and Eric All, and I can't remember, it was his second or third reception. I was like, you know what? The reputation that Eric All had coming into this season, Balas, was what, right?
Drops.
The guy drops, right? The guy, clearly he's fixed that. I mean, and that's great for that kid. I'm really happy for him. He's playing his best football. And yeah, I was a little bit critical in the last couple of weeks because I felt like for a guy of his physical size and stature, he could be a better blocker as far as locking onto people and driving them into the ground. And maybe he'll get there, but he's showing signs of improvement. And yes, he played really well yesterday against Northwestern, and I'm glad to say so. So that's good stuff.
It is, and Schoonmaker is still coming around, and we haven't seen a whole lot of the other tight ends. Honigford has kind of emerged as that third guy, and he's a big time blocker, and that's what they use him for. So we'd love to see them more in the passing game. And I'm going to ask you about this. It seems to me, with as much as they're running, they aren't running a ton of play action. Now, did they run more yesterday? I seem to see a little bit more of it, but do you think that's something that you can look to in the playbook for the future?
Well, I know that's down in distance, right? So if it's second or third and long, I don't know that you're going to get a whole lot of play action because I don't know that defenses really care if you're going to fake a handoff and show a run tendency. So there was, I don't have to go back and look at the film to really see if there were any good opportunities to do so. But I agree with you. The play action appearance in the Michigan offense seems to be, it's out of read zone, right? So it's a little bit, the quarterback takes the snap and shotgun, sort of jabs it in the running back's belly for a second and pulls it back up. It doesn't seem to hold linebackers as much as it could. However, I would say in the previous weeks, there's documented plays where play action has sucked those interior linebackers up because of the threat of a run. I don't know that it was so prevalent yesterday against Northwestern, but it's clearly part of the play. Or, I'm sorry, part of the offense, because it has to be. This is a run offense. And so you have to have play action off of it. And Michigan does have that, and they do it fairly well.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting now with the receivers and the quarterback still kind of working it out. And, we're still getting that faction of fan that says Cade McNamara is awful. We've talked about getting them out of their own awful. Yeah, not Mac level. Yeah, I know.
Awful's. Man, people criticize me for being too tough on some of these guys. Awful's a strong word for
It's
how
a
the kids
strong word.
play.
Yeah. When I think awful, yeah, that's not what first comes to mind. So, but once again, you talked about how the goal was to get out of your own end with a couple of first downs. He did that again yesterday. He had, I think, a 1st and 10 at the 2-yard line. And they're flipping the field, and I don't think people understand how critical that is. Oh, what a crappy possession, what a wasted possession. And I had to remind them on the board that, hey, that's a pretty good possession. When you're flipping the field, they're not getting the ball on your side of the field because you're not punting from your own end zone, where things can go badly, as we saw for Northwestern on the blocked punt. So to me, he did okay. He missed some long balls. There were some long balls that he forced that I didn't think were there. And Jim Harbaugh talked about that a little bit. I don't like them throwing deep to St. Ristel because I don't think he's their best option. If you're going to go deep, let's see Cornelius Johnson or one of those big guys that can go up and get the ball. But to me, that's still a work in progress, and that's something that has to improve if they're going to beat the better teams on the schedule.
Well, there's no doubt. So when you have a deep ball offense, either you hit your guy in stride who's broken away from the defender, and ideally it's one-on-one, or you've gotten past the safety, or you have a receiver that can Braylon Edwards a thing and go up and play rebound football and just go get it. And we haven't seen the consistency with either one of those deep ball threats with any measure of in any game, really. We've got a few pops for sure, but it doesn't seem like it's clicking just yet. And that was evident. Obviously, they took some shots in the first half of that football game. I don't know that any of them made it home. And maybe one of them was a reception. But yes, it still feels like the deep ball offense is a little bit clunky. But back to the point that you made about long possessions and getting the ball down in your own end zone, it's critical that you get the ball out to the 30 or 40-yard line before you have to punt. How many possessions? I wonder what the stat is. And how many possessions in college football start off inside your own 10 that you go down and score touchdowns on? It's probably not very much.
It's not. You know what? Lloyd Carr, in fact, had a notebook, and he had percentages. And of course, they went down with as farther back you got. And it was very few that inside the 10, you go down and you score a touchdown.
Yeah, that's why I said, maybe that's an old school rule, but you got to get a couple first downs before you have to entertain the idea of having to punt. And early in the game, McNamara got that offense down the field, 2 or 3 first downs before we had to turn them. I think it was the first possession of the game. And so, the criticisms of this quarterback for not being Tom Brady in his NFL prime are a little overdone in my view. I still think McNamara is the starter of this offense, but I can see why they're playing McCarthy, because the kid has a different skill set.
He does.
That same skill set, though, Balas, I got to tell you, scares me a little bit because it looks like he's running around, maybe he's thinking, all right, I can get away with this. I'm going to try this back over the field kind of thing. I'm going to squirrel around like I did back in high school. And yeah, you can get away with a little bit of that, but no, sir, not in the big picture of things in the Big Ten, especially with this second half schedule that's coming up. You're not going to make a living doing that. So if McCarthy were our quarterback and he was the only guy we had as an option, that would be a little concerning because of his inexperience. He doesn't know what he can't get away with yet, and that's going to cost us if, in fact, he were the only guy that out there. So I'm absolutely still comfortable with McNamara as the starting quarterback of this offense, running this thing, protecting the football, and living to play another smart down.
Yeah, he's not turning it over still. They aren't losing a ton of yards. They had the 1 sack. Let's talk about that. It certainly looked like it was on Chuck Filiaga to me at right guard. With the guards out, Keegan, who wanted to play from what we hear, was kind of itching to go. But God love him. I love him for that. Rest him. And but the fact that he wants to be in there for his teammates, compared to some of the crap that we've seen the last 3 or 4 years, buddy, to me, warms the cockles of my heart, as Jim Harbaugh would say. So love that about him. Expect him to be back out there that next week, and Zach Zinner as well. But Chuck looked like he got his head on a swivel a little bit. And for a guy who's been there for 4 years, to me, it drives you a little bit crazy when you see him, that safety coming through like he did.
Well, so first of all, let's give credit to Northwestern. It was a well-designed and executed safety blitz. So pass protection was set left on that play. Vistardis was moving to his left. If you watch that play on television, the television copy, you can see is after the ball is snapped, Vistardis looks to his left. Filiaga doesn't have anybody in his near A gap, so he's kind of moving left and looking at that linebacker over to the left. Well, that linebacker bailed. The nose guard worked over to Vistardis's left, and Filiaga just took the bait. And that safety came right in off of Filiaga's right hip. And really, what should have happened is Filiaga should have recognized and smelled the old rat, right, Balas? So when that linebacker bailed out of there and the nose guard looped around, something's got to come. No defense is going to let that go like that. So he should have just glanced over to his right because there was no threat to his left, and known that something was coming, he could have easily picked up that safety blitz. But he didn't. He made the mistake, and we took a sack. You live to play another day. It's all right. You know, it's not like that was a critical game that lost, a play that could have lost the game for us. You don't ever want that to happen. You don't ever want your quarterback to get touched. But it was a good executed blitz by Northwestern, and Filiaga's just got to get better and realize that they're probably going to do that again this Saturday at Michigan State.
Yeah, and hopefully it'll be Zinter and Keegan in there. And we're going to see that double A gap blitz a lot, aren't we? Michigan State seems to bring that. They brought it last year, and that's something that they really need to be prepared for. Now, in 2 years in a row, they played it very well. You're hoping that with even though Michigan State had the extra week, you're hoping that Michigan spent a little bit of time, at least the coaches, the analysts, whatever, preparing for that, because Michigan State's had the more exotic, most successful blitz packages against Michigan, in my opinion, in the last 10, 15 years than just about anybody.
Yeah, what Michigan State has typically done well with their linebackers is they like to bring them in, and like the first guy, it's basically the same as a line stud, Balas. So linebacker comes up, gets near or on the line of scrimmage, and then he's not going to dart for a particular gap. He's going to dart to take out a blocker, right? So imagine linebacker walks up in the right A gap. He's going to dart and try to hit Vistardis's hip and knock him off and get between the right guard and Vistardis. And then there'll be a looper that comes around there. If you don't flatten off, especially against Michigan State, you and I have been breaking this down all year long. When it comes to line stunts and linebacker blitzes, if you don't flatten off the first guy that tries to penetrate the line of scrimmage, it's over. You cannot block it effectively. So this week, more than ever, Michigan's offensive line has got to be really good at pounding that upside foot, using those hands and flattening off the first guy in a blitz or a twist game to protect that quarterback. And if you do that, you got all the time in the world when the looper comes back around. You're all set and ready to go, as long as you don't get those shoulders turned when you flatten it off. They're practicing it. I know they're practicing it because I watched them do it yesterday against Northwestern. They had a couple leakers and a couple plays, but a few others where they were bringing some stuff. They're blocking it just fine. They're going to get tested this Saturday.
Yeah, they really are. And how your gut feeling on that game? To me, I can't really get a read on this one. Neither one of these teams has played a real good football team yet. And I get going up to Wisconsin is a big deal. Wisconsin goes in and blows out Purdue. What a weird year in the Big Ten, right? Wisconsin has been crap. They go up there and pummel Purdue at Purdue, which had just pummeled Iowa at Iowa. And it's about matchups. That's why we always say there's no transitive property in football. Just because this happened on one weekend doesn't mean this is going to happen on another weekend. Look at Illinois and Penn State. You have to. Don't unless you absolutely have to, people. I'm telling you right now, that was awful. But watching them trade, thrust with pillows and beating each other up with pool noodles, as people would say. But to me, this is going to tell us a lot about both teams. I think that Michigan State has really struggled with some of the better defensive teams on their schedule, and there haven't been many. Nebraska, for example, Indiana shut them down, and we saw what Ohio State did to Indiana. So to me, this is going to be one of those games where we find out about both teams.
Yeah, so cover up the pictures behind me and all my Michigan stuff I got here in my home office. Cover that stuff up and just think about this objectively as a football game. This game is awfully close. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of reasons that you could pick Michigan to win. There's a lot of good reasons you could pick Michigan State to win. They've got weapons. They've got really good players. And then when you factor in the emotions of it all, it's going to be a toss-up game. But now, let me put my Michigan stuff back in play here. Of course, I want Michigan to go up there and drop a hammer on those guys and assert themselves against Michigan State. I always want to see that. And I'm hoping that that's what happens. However, Michigan State's got some playmakers, man, on offense. So this defense is going to be tested. And so like we just talked about, the defensive blitzes and down lineman games, this offensive line is going to be tested, including these tight ends. They're going to have to be good to go up there and get a victory. And most importantly, it's the number one statistic, right? You got to run the football. You got to protect the football. If Michigan can do those two things, we will go up there and win.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons, again, that Cade McNamara is going to start people. You don't go out there and throw out the cowboy and say, hey, he looked a lot like Jim Harbaugh on that one where he's running backwards, and I'm thinking, oh my God, where's he going? He's about ready to run him out of field goal range. Not that they would have had to kick a field goal anyway. I did want your opinion on that play. You saw the crackback block on Chuck Filiaga, and you're thinking, come on, people. You're trying to protect your quarterback, number one. So by the rule, yes, it's probably a decent call, but you got to do that if you're an offensive lineman, right?
First of all, I hate the rule.
Mm-hmm.
Because the old crackback blocks used to be so much fun to be able to do. And the defensive guys used to always have to have a head on a swivel to look out for some sniper that was going to come take them out. And that was always fun. So I hate the rule. But I guess by the letter of the rule, yeah, technically it was. I hated it. But, where do you draw the line on that play, Balas, with our young quarterback?
Right.
He's tailing out of there. He's spinning backwards. He's heading toward the sideline. I'm like, bro, there's nowhere to run here. Where are you going?
Mm-hmm.
And then he throws that thing up, finds Seltzer over the middle there toward the hash a little bit late. He goes up and gets it. Great. Wonderful. You made something out of nothing. Don't do that again.
Right.
It's just get rid of the football. I don't think it's a high percentage success rate when you start spinning backwards, trying to make stuff up. This is not high school football. I'm sure that the coaches are coaching him to be very careful, play the percentages. There's a time and place to make something happen. And in that situation, he did. I'm not going to kill the kid for it. Yep. I just know that in the big picture, that's not how you design an offense and take care of the football. Every time that he starts making this stuff up, I'm like, all right, okay, all right, got away with it this time.
Yep.
The law of averages is going to catch up, and that's either going to be a turnover or you're going to get bent in half and get hurt.
Yeah, I do like him running the football, though. The kid's got some moxie. He's got some courage. One of these days, he's going to take a big hit probably, and then we're going to be like, God. But at the same, remember Dylan McCaffrey against Wisconsin a couple of years ago. So you got to get down, kid. That's another thing to remember. But he's got some moves, man. That kid can run the ball. And as a dual threat, you can see why people think he's the future.
No doubt about it. I watch him run around and I go, this kid looks exciting. This is kind of some fun stuff to watch. I look forward to watching him with 30 more pounds on that skeleton of his, with some more heft and some more weight in a full year in the Michigan strength and conditioning program, getting up to training table and consuming about 10,000 calories and beefing up. And then I'll feel better about him running around because he looks like he would be susceptible to taking a devastating shot out there. And as exciting as it is, it only takes one well-angled safety to end your day.
Yes, and yet it never messes up his hair, even when he takes off that helmet. Unbelievable. It's good stuff. Hey, real quick, man, the Big Ten, Ohio State's going to run away with this thing. I'm watching them now, and they've reached another level there. They've figured out some of their problems on defense, but there's just no stopping that offense when they're clicking. And they've got NFL quarterbacks, they got NFL receivers. I don't see anybody beating them.
So I watched the Indiana game last night. I wanted to give that a real hard look and just evaluate. I know it's Indiana's defense, and so sure, we'll throw a little asterisk on there. That's fine. But I got to tell you, Ohio State's offensive line is for real. Their running backs are really good. Their wide receivers are off the chart. They got a really good tight end. This offense has got weapons everywhere. And this kid that's throwing the ball, he's throwing sharp dime darts.
Yep.
In the rain, you get the stripes on that ball. There was no wobble to that. Yep. This kid throws a laser, and it's like, wow. No one's going to beat Ohio State in this league, and not this year, unless Ohio State makes some mistakes, and anything can happen. Doesn't mean I don't want to beat them, Balas. I'm just covering my Michigan stuff over my shoulder here. I'm just trying to be objective. They're damn good.
Yeah, they really are. So, and again, anything can happen. It doesn't generally happen to Ohio State. We saw them be blown out by Purdue a few years ago, but you look at what happened to Penn State against Illinois, and man, I'm not going to say that one looks a little less daunting now, but with Penn State having a little less to play for, clearly at this point. Sean Clifford looks to be a shell of the quarterback he was. He wasn't very good in the first place, in my opinion. But to me, and I hate to even bring this up, but you could lose that Michigan State game and still be in the mix for a Big Ten title when Ohio State comes to town, because there are still some games to play here.
Yeah, there may be a little bit of margin for error, but I have no doubts that when we go over to Penn State and play on a Saturday night, they'll all be juiced up, ready to go. It'll be a difficult environment to go win in, as every Big Ten road game is, for sure. And just like this Saturday up at Michigan State, I think the noon kickoff is to our benefit on that one for sure. Not that it's going to be docile in there, and the crowd will be ready to go. It'll be an emotional game, as it always is. But I don't know. Penn State, yeah, they may have lost a little bit of the juice on their season. But when Michigan comes to town, Balas, how everybody plays against us, man. It's lights out. They just hate to see that helmet, and they just, they always give it their best. And so you come to expect that when you take the field wearing that uniform.
Yep. You have your old helmet sitting around somewhere?
Yeah, it's here.
Let's see.
It's right there, baby. Yeah.
There you go, man. Look at it. Got some good use out of that.
Look at that thing, man.
Yeah. Some helmet stickers, man.
Oh, yeah.
Just a few. That's good
helmet
stuff.
Stickers on there, and you can see the picture there of Steve and Joe. And here's my let me get that turned there. Those are my championship rings.
Yeah.
And there are right there
the dudes.
Those are the fifth-year seniors from 1992, the 14 guys in the history of Michigan football that have won 5 Big Ten champions.
Pretty impressive, man. And keep in mind that you lose one more staff picks and you have to give up one of those rings. So whichever one's your least favorite, just pick it out right now, because, boy, I don't know, man. You're off again.
Yeah, I was close. I was close on this one. I think my pick was like 34 to 13 or something, and
49 to 13. So
okay, yeah.
Let's just say you finished last again, and please nobody bet the house on Doug Skene's picks.
No, don't do that.
Hey, there's room for improvement. We'll put it that way. So
right.
He's Doug Skene. Thanks, Skene, for your time. We will break down some plays for our In the Trenches. We will talk to you again on Wednesday and look ahead to Michigan State.
All right, go Blue, Balas.